and to answer any questions that you might have. Just to know a little bit of housekeeping here, this session is being recorded so that we can play it back and share it with other people who may not be able to attend. All of your phone lines have been muted. All the Link and Skype lines have been muted. You will be able to unmute your lines by hitting *6 that mutes your landlines if you're calling in on a separate line that was provided, and *1 will unmute those lines afterwards after our presentation, and you can ask questions. But during the presentation, you're most welcome to use your chat box on the left-hand side of your screen. You're able to type in messages and questions, and we'll try to track those and answer those in a timely way. Also to know that the handouts and the slide deck and all of the documents that we talk about today we're going to be sharing with you after this session. So you can make notes if you wish, and we'll be sending, as I say, that information to you afterwards so you can refer back to the slide deck. And of course, always you're welcome to be in touch with ourselves. Any questions and follow-up, that's what we're here for, is to try to answer your questions and to work with you to work to an end here. We're able to provide some conversations across Alberta. So we'll get started. Just wanted to first of all do a little bit of introductions to the Cannabis Let's Talk Alberta project team. My name is Ron Beach, and I'm the team lead with Promotion and Prevention Community Initiatives through Addiction and Mental Health. And my colleagues that are with me today are Lauralee Moran, Health Promotion Facilitator in Lloydminster, Michelle Sauvé, Tobacco Reduction Counselor in Medicine Hat, and another member of our team not able to join us today is Zan Harvey-Jansen, and she's in Edmonton, and she's on the Promotion and Prevention Community Initiatives team as well. We're also joined in a collaborative partnership with this project team with the Lloydminster Community Coalition, and they're a key contributor to this project in helping us manage a lot of the different steps and administratively and otherwise so that we're able to bring this project to you. Just a real quick brief, I think, well, I'll just back up a moment here. A little bit of overview about this project. Again, it is funded through Health Canada, and we're working with the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research, the CISUR. How's that for another acronym? You may have known them as CAR-BC, the Center for Addictions Research of BC, and they just recently changed their name to the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research, CISUR. So the funds are coming through Health Canada to provide dialogues across Canada, conversations and dialogues across Canada. Our interest, of course, is working here in Alberta. I'm just going to ignore getting a phone call. Sorry about that. So today, our objective today, and agenda rather, is to go through an overview of the project, talk more directly and specifically about the facilitator training, the key messages that will also be a part of the training, the resources that will be available to you as a facilitator. We'll be talking about the proposal and the budget documents that we've prepared that we'll be sharing with you after this session so that you can go back with your community and your team and think about how you'll want to put a proposal together. We'll talk about that. The proposals are due on January 31st, that's our call date, and we're looking then at providing consultation during this whole process between now and that call date, of course, by email, by phone, by wherever possible. We'll be in touch, that conversation between yourselves and our team as well to help with those proposals, and then there will be some training following that. And so we're going to touch and talk about all these different pieces here in the next few minutes. To shed some further light on the Cannabis Let's Talk Alberta project, if you recall, we talked about the outcomes that the CISUR was working towards. They were working towards communities that would be engaged in dialogue and supported across Alberta. Community stakeholders would have access to informed resources that help facilitate meaningful dialogues. Strengthened community capacity to support dialogues related to cannabis and cannabis policy, and increased understanding of the range of attitudes, beliefs, and values related to cannabis and cannabis policy. And finally, they were interested in broader citizen engagement, leading to increased community cohesion, resilience, and understanding. The purpose of their project and their interest and their goal was to not debate or produce or control anything, but to discover through mutual discussion and reflection. The target population was all of generally of all of Alberta, as diverse as we can make it, as diverse as our imaginations and our community opportunities will allow. So there's no predetermined list of people that you would host at your conversations, and we have no predetermined number of communities and conversations that we will host. We're interested in any and all proposals. So in very plain language, after just having said what I said, I'd just like to recap that the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research are interested in evaluating tools that are constructive for complex community and social dialogues. The topic or the subject matter happens to be cannabis, but it could be other subject matters in the future. So they're interested in evaluating those tools around conversation. Addiction and mental health, we're interested in that as well, but we're also interested in community health promotion, so building community capacity. And also we're also interested in providing cited and reliable health information. So we add a layer to that. We want to help build community capacity, and we want to provide cited and reliable health information without taking away from the theme and the interest of the CISUR. We want to build on that. So I want to encourage you then to think about it as a community leader and stakeholder in your community. What's in it for you? And I would venture to say that there's advantages and there's things that you're thinking of that will bring value to your community as well. Still keeping in interest the goals of the overall project, but what are the returns? And that's what we're hoping to explore with you. I want to talk for a moment about the key messages of what we know. We want to make sure we're providing cited and reliable information, health information about cannabis, and there is so much information out there. Part of the training that we will offer with our facilitators is information that is reliable, messages that we're going to gather through addiction and mental health, that we have leads on addiction and mental health that sit at the Alberta Health Secretariat table. So they're sitting there with all the cross-ministerial tables and other stakeholders, including medical officers of health, and there's key messages that are going to be generated there that we're going to incorporate in this training. And we want to make sure that you have those facts so we can help you separate myths from facts. This is what we know. This is good, reliable sources to go and learn more. I want to say a little bit about that too. We'll talk more about that in the training. Is that this is good key information to have. Our proposals that we're entertaining, we're not making them exclusive to addiction and mental health, AHS addiction and mental health staff. If there's, as a matter of fact, we're looking for diverse opportunities. And so if you are a stakeholder that is external to our workplace, you're most welcome. We're hoping that you're working collaboratively with your local AHS addiction and mental health staff person, and we hope to, but that may not always be the case, but we hope to make linkages there so that that information is imparted in a way that you feel comfortable with, and we're working together and aligned. We'll talk more about that in a moment when we go into the training, and certainly we can answer more questions that you might have. We're going to talk about the facilitator training. After your proposals are taken in and accepted, reviewed and accepted, we'll be looking at, again, that date is January 31st. We're looking for them in 2018. We'll be looking at providing training for one of your facilitators one of your key leads, preferably more in your community, to come together. And we're going to do this at locations that are accessible to you, and strategic, of course. To support your travel, there will be budget funds from this project, so your travel would be supported. But in many cases, we hope to come to your location in central places in the north, south, central zones, as well as Calgary and Edmonton. We hope to co-locate the trainings wherever possible, where the interest lies. We hope to make them accessible. We'll be setting dates in February and March so that you can then lead your, further your planning and look at delivering your conversations in your community, however they may look, in the spring of 2018. So Laura Lee, just, if I may, just turn it over to you to talk more about the training.
Great, thank you, Ron, and good morning, everyone. Certainly pleased to have you join us for this conversation today. And I just wanted to comment about the facilitator training. We will be setting some dates, not necessarily the specific locations, but some dates that you can get into your calendar. So for Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, and a couple of other dates for other areas of the different zones, so that you can put those dates in your calendar, and then we'll choose the location once we have the proposal submitted. So we hope to have that to you within the week so that you can block that time. And so I'm thinking about what will that training look like, and you're probably all curious about that. And as discussed at the information sessions, Cannabis Let's Talk, we use the approach of nurturing community conversations as a way to really harness and build on the wisdom and capacity that exists within groups and within the communities. And so during the facilitator training, we will work with the principles of dialogue to build facilitator skills so that you can confidently engage and support the dialogue. And we'll model and practice the styles or the different ways of nurturing conversation. So really our goal is to create that experience so that you will know what it feels like or looks like to draw from conversations as they're happening, and to create an opportunity for all voices to be heard. So some of the important pieces that will be developed to ensure that you have the information to share facts about cannabis, practice some myth busting while drawing conversation back to the facts. And that's the pieces that Ron was alluding to, is that we want to make sure that we don't know who's going to come to the conversations. And so you could have an industry lobbyist there, you could have lots of different perspectives and lots of misinformation. And so we want to make sure that you have those key messages, those facts that are easily related back to the conversation, to draw it back to what we know to be the truth about cannabis. And so then we'll also explore ways of knowing and managing those alternative facts. So we've gone through kind of a year of fake news, or maybe 2 years of fake news. And so how do you respond to that? And so we want to explore that during the facilitator training as well, and make sure that the facilitators and the project team members who will be part of the event will be able to easily address them during the conversations. The training will also provide you with an experience that will help you build your own style of facilitating and engaging in conversation. We all have a little bit of a different style, so helping you kind of explore that and find that level of comfort that you have in engaging in the conversations and delivering the facilitated questions. And so it will provide you with that learning on the principles of dialogue and kind of setting the stage for meaningful engagement. So just to recap, the principles of dialogue that we will use are to practice empathy. So creating a space that really encourages all to feel what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, will encourage stories and sharing of concerns and feelings. We'll celebrate diversity, and so we hope, and Ron's talked about this already, that we'll have a diverse range of perspectives through invitation or design and activities or questions. And so you may have an opportunity to just invite the general public. So you might at one conversation have a very diverse audience, or you might be targeting college students, and so you might have a more narrow target audience, but still the perspectives could be quite diverse in that. And that during that celebrating of diversity, that we also ensure that all voices are heard and that we find a way to encourage everyone to participate. that we promote curiosity and learning. And so we'll be posing some thoughtful questions, and we'll be providing those with you and working with you to develop what those questions look like that encourage exploration and self-reflection. And we'll practice that reflective listening to build understanding and learning by all. We really want to expose assumptions and suspend judgment, so we'll explore how personal views are influenced by assumptions based on our past, and facilitators will help participants engage in activities putting oneself in the other's shoes. And so we'll have some activities that you can embed into your conversation that support that. And finally, to put power in its place, and this is really an important one because we want to focus on creating that safe space where all opinions are welcomed. And so we want to encourage people, and this is part of setting the stage, to join the conversation as fellow citizens and not representatives of a position. And so yesterday I was chatting with a mayor of a local community and just saying, you know, we want decision makers to be able to be part of these conversations, but we want them to be part of the conversations as a resident and not in their position. Certainly following that conversation, take with you what you hear, what's important to the public, what their concerns are, what they want this to look like in the community, and use it to inform your decisions. But at the conversation, you're just another resident like everybody else. And then the facilitator training right now is under development, and as we continue to wait for some tools that come out of CISUR, we're also working hard to ensure that the facilitator training will be time that's well spent for you. And certainly if you have some suggestions on what you want the training to cover, if you have this idea of, you know, I really need to make sure that at that facilitator training I understand this specific area, or build this skill, we'd love to hear your suggestions. So we're open to suggestions right now, and you can just send those to us via email. And so this is also an opportunity for us to think outside the box once again and create that session that's really meaningful and useful for this project, but also for future projects. So as we work with communities to build understanding and empathy, we want to make sure that we build a format and some training and some skills in communities to have these conversations, because there could be opportunities for us to do this with other topic areas. So this topic area is cannabis, but we could do this around alcohol. We could do it around other drugs, opioids. We could also do it around mental health, but lots of issues. Gambling has been some issues. Gambling in Lloydminster has always been a topic of great debate. And so how do we move that from the debate to the really building understanding and building those bridges between different perspectives in our community and coming up with a plan that works really well for us. So resources, thank you, Ron. I see that you moved that ahead. So we wanted to take an opportunity to show you the proposal and the budget documents and just go through those. So if you have any questions, that we'll be open to answering your questions at the end of our conversation, or you can put them in the chat box and we'll address them when we get there. So Ron's just going to pull up that CLTA community proposal, and we wanted to keep it really simple for you. And so this will be a Word document that will be hosted on our website, as well as it can be emailed out to you. And so we're just really looking for the location, who will be your banker. So do you have a not-for-profit, an FCSS, a community coalition, somebody that will manage the funds on your behalf and pay the bills. The primary contact, so identify at least one person who we can communicate back and forth with. If you have an HS support person, and we really encourage that, but like Ron said, it's not necessary to just put their name and contact information in there. And then who will be the facilitators for your conversation? And so just putting in their name and contact information so we can make sure they get the information around the facilitator training. We're able to easily communicate with them. Then who will the target group be? And you know, we didn't talk about this as a committee, but I think there's a couple of options for you. Maybe you're wanting to host 2 or 3 conversations, and so I would suggest that, because the form is so simple, that you could just you know, fill out one for each of the conversations so that we're able to easily manage that and have those conversations with you, or just copy and paste this in and do 3 in this one document. And so who's that target group? And so these are just just some suggestions, but we really encourage you to look at your community and think about who's best for you to engage in the conversation. And so do you want to do a broader community one? Do you want to do one just focused on a workplace? For instance, in Lloydminster, we would have, Lakeland College as a large employer, or Husky, or perhaps it's the Chamber of Commerce that comes together. Also think about what opportunities do you have to engage young adults. And so do you have a young adult professional association or some college or university campus in your region that you could connect with? So, and thinking about your community coalitions or your networks, is there an opportunity to engage with them and have the conversation? So really we're open to any of your ideas. We have the Lloydminster Youth Council here, and so the Youth Health Policy Committee is really interested in hosting one of those events. So whatever works for your community, we really encourage. And then identify how you plan to engage. So what kind of event will you host? Will it be something like the Dinner and Dialogue or the World Cafe, where it's a little bit more of a formal event? Or will it be something out of the box and a great idea that you may have for your community? And so we really encourage you to think about those creative ways that you can connect. And then just some basic information around the timeline for hosting your event. So what the date will be, where you'll be hosting it, advertising and event promotion, refreshment supplies. Just that's a checklist for you to make sure. Registration, how will you manage that? Will it just be open, or do you want people to pre-register? The budget request, and we'll go through that document quickly. And then we want to make sure after the events that we have an opportunity to debrief with you. What worked well? What were the challenges? What were your successes, and how can we just improve this project for future adaptation and use? Thank you, Ron. If you just want to move to the budget now. So again, a very simple document for you to complete, and so we just want to know your community, and then what are the costs associated with hosting the event. And so travel will be for your facilitator expenses, or maybe you need to travel to another community to do some work. Marketing, do you need to do some marketing, or can you access social media or other ways to market your events through your contacts and your partners? Hosting, so what will the event look like? What will the costs associated with the event for supplies and refreshments, etc. be? And do you have any other expenses that you need to have covered? And so just include that along with your proposal so that we can take a look at the budget, and we'll chat with you about that. So thank you, Ron, for those. Now, if you could just open up our website. We had some experience with Connection Stronger Families project, where we recognize that not everybody has access to shared drives within AHS or to Dropbox, and so we're trying to make it really easy for you to have a one place to go for information. So we've put a repository on our website for our drug coalition, allmyhome.com, and you'll see this is the front page. Up in the top right corner is a little logo, Cannabis Let's Talk, and if you click on that, here it comes. And so all of the information will be on here for you to download. And so we've started to populate it a little bit, and we wanted to make sure that in terms of, this is a new concept for us, and so when we look at what the style of conversation will be like and that nurturing conversation, we wanted to give you some background documents that you could read. And so we've picked the two best ones that we thought would support you in the development of your plan and help you to understand the conversation style and this dialogue. And so a guide to nurturing community dialogue is one of them, and it's a nice, simple, easy to read document, and you'll find in there the principles of dialogue as well. And so you can just take a look at it. It'll always be on the website, or you can download a copy and print it, whatever you like, but that's available for you to use. And we really encourage you to read this document, because it will help to set the stage nicely for your committee. And then Let's Talk Dialogue, Community Conversations About Drugs. We just thought this was another nice document to kind of help you get into thinking about what this might look like in your community, and why this approach. We think that we want to go with this approach and really start to build these kinds of conversations across communities. So this one was about drugs, but applicable to really any issue. And so we encourage you to read those two documents. And then the other documents that are on the website are the ones that we've just reviewed. And so the one would be the community budget, the proposal, the documents that Ron has already shown you. And then we're going to add a few other ones. So the world, yeah. Oh, so it came up as password protected. We'll have to fix that. So we had some documents that were in, we'll get our IT person to fix this up, but we had some documents that were in our shared drive, and the shared drive was password protected, and so we'll just fix that up for you guys. And then what is a World Cafe conversation? And we'll also have one on there about what is a dinner and dialogue, and what is a paint night. And so just really giving you an overview of what those types or styles of events could look like, and some suggestions on how you might host those styles of events. And certainly you don't have to follow these particular ideas. They're just ideas there for you, and you can adapt them however it works for your community. And then finally, our small but mighty team will be available to provide that consultation and support along the way via telephone and email. And so because this is such a new style of project for us, and it's important that we work together kind of across the miles to share information and learn from each other as we continue to develop the project. So very interested in having those conversations and the feedback from you. So next slide, please. So in an effort to really support you, and because there's so much information out there around cannabis, and so many, we've had a cannabis dealer logo and images looks very much like Alberta Health Services, and so we wanted to make sure that with all of the different activities happening over this next year around cannabis, that you could really brand your event, your community conversation to this project. And so it will be easy for us to identify, and easy for community members to identify as well. So we've developed the Cannabis Let's Talk logo that you've seen on all of our resources already. And then we've done some social media files that you'll be able to use to engage community, to promote your event. And I've just done up a couple of mock-up ones here. And so this is just, mocking or saying that we're having this event in Lloydminster, and there's 16 different files, but join us May 5th at the Root, get your ticket, your free ticket at Pictactic, and then just some other information. And so there's 4 different styles that follow the conversation, the cannabis community, and I can't remember the other one. And so we just really wanted to kind of give you kind of an example of how you could use these social media files. You're not restricted to using this, but we want to make sure that these are used specifically by the committees that are running Cannabis Let's Talk sessions. So they'll be shared with you so that you can edit them, and all of the files can be edited and add your own logo to them if you have a logo for a coalition or a organization that's supporting these conversations, and you can also add your own details to them. So all of those social media files will be available to you to use. And in addition to that, we have a poster, and if Ron can just pull up that poster. And so again, you can see that we've added the Lloydminster logo to this. We've I just tagged all of the sections Let's Talk and invited them to get their free tickets at Pictactic and come join us for a community conversation. And so this was just a quick mock-up to give you an example. These boxes can all be moved around and changed to suit. So if you need like one whole side or one bottom piece to just really boldly promote your event, you have the ability within this document to move those files around. You're not bound to this design, but we just want to make sure that some of the pieces remain the same. Cannabis Let's Talk is on there, and that you have the ability to either use them as presented or to adjust them to suit your needs. And so that's just another opportunity to brand the project and to support you, so you don't have to spend money on developing those brand tools. And the logo will be provided to you as well, the Cannabis Let's Talk logo, in a format that you can just add to documents. And then in addition to all of that, you've seen in the information sessions as well as today the PowerPoint presentation. And so some events may like to have a PowerPoint so it helps to guide their conversations, or they can give a visual along with the conversation. And so these PowerPoint slides will be available to you to edit and use to support your event as well. Okay, and next slide. I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I apologize. And so finally, just before we move into what the next steps are, we really wanted to share this slide with you again from the information sessions as a way to encourage you to think outside the box and to brainstorm what Cannabis Let's Talk will look like in your community. And so you know your community's best, and you most likely have encountered conversations about cannabis legalization in the coffee shop already and at your network meetings and with municipal staff and councils. Yesterday I was at a mental health capacity building meeting, and we spent about 15 or 20 minutes talking about Cannabis Let's Talk and about the issue itself. And so and we've had many conversations with our adult children at our dinner table around this issue and thinking about what that might look like. And so we really recognize that many community members are curious, and some are maybe really concerned or think it's about time that cannabis was legalized, and others just really want the details of what cannabis legalization will look like in Canada and in their community. And so thinking about your community again, who to engage, thinking outside that box, who are those people that you've been hearing comments from, or maybe it's on, we have this page in Lloydminster on Facebook called What's Happening in Lloydminster, and I don't ever recommend anybody join it, because the information on there is all of those alternative facts, but it is interesting, and sometimes I'm curious and go and read it so I can understand what are those myths in the community, and what are the issues that people are identifying on there that we could perhaps as a AHS addiction mental health staff or as a coalition start to address and to do some myth busting around. And so it is really helpful to kind of have that knowledge of what's going on in your community and what those conversations are like. And so what are those opportunities to connect with a young professional group, or with a college or workplaces, service clubs like the Rotary perhaps, or just host it with your network. And so also there's room to host more than one conversation. And so in the Lloydminster region, we're hoping to host 2 or 3 different conversations with different target audiences. And in fact, our youth have asked if they could be trained facilitators so that they could actually lead the conversation with young people. And so certainly that opportunity is available to you. And then how to engage. And so once you identify that target group and you think outside the box once again to establish what type of engagement would be meaningful to them. And so, as I said, we're working on those sample one-pagers of different styles of events that you could consider, but the event does not need to fit inside a box. And so it can just overflow and be completely different, make your own box. And so we really encourage you to think about what might work. One of the things that we just kind of popped up the other day was maybe doing a Kahoot with young people, and so that's where you have online questions with answers, and they just from their smartphone all vote and or respond, and so really quickly you can see it populating as you ask the questions and get a response quickly about what youth are thinking, and it's a nice safe way for them to do it without having to speak the words or say out loud what they think. And so, and then when to engage as well. And so start now, and we're so glad that you joined us today, but engage that committee to that of partners that can host this event, identify who those facilitators will be, and as you identify those, you can and think about your event, you can send those proposals into us. You don't need to wait till January 31st. The sooner we get them, the sooner we can help supporting your work and start to identify those locations where we'll host those facilitator trainings. And then make sure you have that conversation about community and identify who those target participants are and the style of conversation that you want to host and where is a good location for that. So we're hoping that most communities can host their conversations between April and June of 2018, but start working on those proposals and budget documents now, and send your questions in as they come up. And if you have some questions now, you can start typing them into the chat box there, and we'll address them. And so I'm going to pass it back to Ron, and we'll just continue on with sharing information.
Thank you very much, Laura Lee. That was great. I appreciate the way you're able to capture all the details there. So thank you for that. So now we're going to take time to look at questions that you might have or comments. You know, did we answer all your questions? Are there pieces that are missing for you that we could expand on? What we're left at the end of the day is we want you to be comfortable and be able to go back to your communities and start planning and thinking about what your proposal might look like. To take the documents that we'll share with you afterwards, the slide deck, the proposal and budget forms, and to begin to work on them. And we're really inviting you to be in touch with our committee by email, by phone. We're happy to be in touch with you as we can sort of have the conversation back and forth as to how this is going to work and be best supported in your community. So again, we'd like you to, we encourage you to unmute your phone lines, and I guess, Michelle, you might have the master control with that, but others, if you're on a landline, you can hit, I think, we said *6 or no, *1. *1. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I've unmuted everybody because I do know some people aren't that familiar with Link and whatnot, so I just unmuted everybody. We do have a question from Jeanette Walker. A few staff were unable to attend the 2 sessions this week. Is there an opportunity to provide another overview session?
My first inclination is to say yes, Jeanette. I think what would be helpful is maybe we can connect with yourself and find a time that's going to work well for your team and maybe some other community partners. But absolutely. So please be in touch.
And Jeanette, we started to collect a list of people who weren't able to attend these 2 sessions, and so once we, give a week or so for people to say, oh, I missed it, I need to join in, we'll set another date and connect with all those that have advised us.
Jeanette says thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to. I think we've done our best to cast a wide net out there and encourage you to also to share the meeting invite with other community partners that you may have, if other people are interested, and certainly, and then your follow-up consultations as well. Your leads and your community partners. We can do these group phone conversations and make sure that we're as best we can helpful to your proposals. Are there any other questions, Michelle, that are coming into the text box? Maybe I should go there myself.
No, nothing right now, Ron. You're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And any
I
other?
have a question from Cora.
Okay.
She said she recalls there being mention of $500 being available for funding. Is that per community or per event?
I don't know that we've ever sort of said that there's a limit, and because there isn't, and we're looking at each proposal on its own merit, and communities are not restricted in how many proposals they will put in. We're looking at their budget proposals, and there's no limit there, Cora. And your facilitator is part of your budget, in terms of their travel costs. That's all part of the budget that will be supported as well. So that limit doesn't really, in our view, exist.
So there's a question from Stacy. Are there specific objectives, outcomes for the community conversations set by Cannabis Let's Talk Alberta, or are they determined locally?
Well, again, our outcomes are, well, the CISUR is looking at most significant change. They're looking at a very broad qualitative evaluation. It's not onerous at all, that we'll be able to provide feedback to them about most significant change. They're looking for narrative stories about change in a community. Our interest is, as I said, in addiction and mental health, is about similar in its qualitative. We're looking for interest in community development, your capacity, your connections, your relationships, as well as providing good, concise, reliable health messaging. Now, your own individual objectives and outcomes that you'll want to measure, I think that's for your committee to think about, and that is really relative to each community and each proposal. Would you add anything to that, Laura-Lee or Michelle?
Laura-Lee here, and I would just add that for us in our community, our community council or our Lloydminster City Council is really wanting to know what are the concerns that the community has, how are people feeling about this, and they want to get that feedback so that they can really inform their decision making. So where do they want to have retail sales available, how many sites, where will people be able to use cannabis products in the community, so will it be open in parks and playgrounds like provincial legislation allows for, and festivals, or will we close that? And so municipalities have the ability to strengthen and do more than what the provincial legislation is. And so they're really looking at what kind of information comes out of these conversations to help them make some decisions around what that will look like in our community. And they'll do their own consultation as well. But I think this is an opportunity to use these conversations to either identify concerns in your community that you could address through some myth busting or providing good information, or is there some policy pieces that can come out of that? And so that's not the overall project's goal, but certainly for some individual communities that would be an opportunity for them to just have that level of engagement and understanding with their community.
And then we have a question from Leah, and it is there a maximum number of facilitators that will be eligible for training from one community or city?
The simple answer to that is no. We're going to look at each proposal on merit. If we're in a site in Edmonton and we're able to host and have that many people there, the more the better.
Thanks, Ron. Shoshana wants to know, is there a link to the PowerPoint presentation that would be used? And I do think Laura-Lee mentioned that she'll send that out. I'm not sure if you mean, Shoshana, this one or the template, but there will be those resources available.
Yeah, we'll send a summary of this presentation as well as links to and rather the proposal documents, as well as link to the why I can't ever say that.
YLL My Home. Yeah.
It rolls off your tongue.
I've had a lot of practice. So yes, but we will not be posting the social media files, the poster files, or those templates, the PowerPoint templates, on the public website. Those will be sent to each committee for them to use, just because we don't want people who might take those social media files and start using them branded to our projects, but they're not part of it. And so we just want to make sure that there's a little bit of protection in place for those branded documents to protect your events as well as the overall project.
And Martin's just wondering if if there will be a presentation that has the base facts so we are consistent.
Oh, Martin, thanks for your question. It was meaning when I was referring to key messages. We're going to provide key messages in a scalable way, and what I mean by that is we've got those health messages that are reliable and cited, and then we're going to provide them for you as a facilitator. This is part of, I would envision it, and maybe as you look at your proposal in your community, how you would roll it out. But I think it's at the beginning of whatever your conversation looks like, and it's also it's part of setting the stage for the milieu that this is a conversation, not a debate. This is what we know and this is what we don't know. These are some myths. And how much time that takes, I think, has to be on scale so that you're still, we can't, I don't believe, stay true to this goal and objective about dialogue and delve into each matter as deeply as it possibly could go into. You could talk about, for instance, medicinal marijuana all evening long. That's not the purpose of this. There will be other times and places, and it's valued. People need information. We want to provide it in a concise way. Here's where you can find, and here's what we know, and here's reliable cited sources. And we also have to appreciate, in some instances, you may have an addiction mental health person that might help deliver that key part as you set up and stage your event in the milieu of your overall itinerary. But you may not. You may not have an addiction and mental health staff person there, a part of your group. We hope that you do, but you may not. And so it still has to be a message that you would feel comfortable, and that's what the facilitator training will include, is those key messages in a scalable way that you could, as a person outside of addiction and mental health, relay those pieces in the format, but then in still keeping with what you're wanting to deliver. I hope that makes sense, Martin.
Yeah, and this is Laura Lee. I just want to add to that. So for any of you that have experience with dinner and dialogues, you'll recall that we asked some really facilitated questions throughout to keep the conversation moving. And so Zan and I had an opportunity to chat this week about what that might look like in terms of the facilitator training and kind of providing you with those facilitated questions that we might ask. And so during the dinner and dialogues around alcohol, we asked, how is alcohol used in your world? What would you like to see changed? We asked some specific questions around that. And so those won't be the questions for this Cannabis Let's Talk, but thinking about, would there be 5 questions that we would provide to you as to support that facilitation of the conversation? And the answer to that would be yes. And you might change up the language dependent on your target audience or the style of presentation that you're doing, but the basic questions would remain the same.
What is the primary reporting evaluation for these conversations? We haven't determined that as a committee exactly, but to know it will not be onerous for you. We're looking at significant change, and we're looking at those qualitative things as well that you might measure in terms of engagement in your community. The other pieces of evaluation that you might want to add, those are things that you would, as a committee, or local committee, would have to think about. But it will not be onerous. I think that you can, And Laura Lee, anything that you would add to that?
Well, and we are waiting for CISUR to kind of develop their evaluation tools for us. And so, but I anticipate them to be very simple, and that through our conversation, our debrief sessions with you, that we'll be able to draw out the information we need to complete our reporting. So I agree that we do not want this to be an onerous task for you. And we also want to make sure that we are capturing those really good stories, those changes that have occurred, and so I think that's what we'll be really focusing to highlight after the conversations have happened.
What does CISU stand for again? And it was it's the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research. If you type in CISUR into your Google or CARBC, CARBC, you'll get them. They just recently changed their name within the past month, but they're based out of the University of Victoria, been around for a long time. While we're waiting for more questions, I just wanted to throw out a couple of things just to be the devil's advocate here. There was one question that came up with a previous group around what if media or lobbyist groups want to attend, and we'll address that in the training. And I think Laura Lee spoke to that earlier in this presentation, is that our goals and our objectives may be different than a lobbyist and a media person, but they're certainly welcome to attend as a private citizen. And I think as long as you're transparent and you think about strategically about how you're inviting people and about how you're hosting and how the evening will go. I mean, we certainly want to be prepared for I'll just say the word. Sometimes people will take over a meeting for their own agenda, and that's not something we would like to see, and that's something we want to try to prepare for. This is not the time and the place for a lobbyist, but yes, absolutely, people will have different views. We want diverse views. We want people to be able to talk, but in the milieu that we'll be setting the stage for, it will be a shared conversation, equal time and space. That's what we'll be encouraging. It's not about one opinion trumping another. And the other thing I want to say is just about the hosting. We've been given a budget that provides us a lot of latitude in terms of these conversations, and so we're not limited in the numbers that we will host across the provinces, and so we're really trying to look for as many that are meaningful and that make sense for you. But we're also hosting on scale, and what I mean by that is you provide your budgets, and as you and I are both taxpayers. We're not going to be doing hosting budgets where people are doing surf and turf or steak and lobster and this kind of thing, but reasonable amounts for dinner and dialogues in the past and community conversations. There's a hosting budget, and if you look at a cost per person to host it, so you have a nice supper or a breakfast or however you see this unfolding, or other hosting costs, we will look at those, and those will be looked upon favorably. Just wanted people to know that. Now, I've done a bunch of rambling here, Laura Lee.
Usually he leaves that for me to do, but
are there, just looking to the phone lines, does anybody want, we'll give you let you put in a word edgewise if you'd like to ask a question, or any other to the texting.
There's no other questions in the instant message box. Laura Lee, oh, here we go. Shoshana asks, when engaging different community groups, do you have some strategic conversations for some of the different groups? Examples, local government, and talking to the about playground policies, realizing we want people to come as community residents. I think Laura Lee has addressed that, Shoshana. We want people to come as a community person and put their positions aside.
Well, and I'm just curious, Shoshana, if your question is really thinking about how do we have that conversation to invite different target audiences to the conversation, and I think it's all the same in terms of we really want to have people express their views and their perspectives and be part of this conversation, understand some of the facts, the health messages around cannabis as well, and so I think that the next conversation after this for some communities might be those policy pieces, and so there will be some support from addiction and mental health. Rana, sorry if I speak out of turn on that, but certainly there are some support, and even groups like Smoke Free Alberta and Action on Smoking and Health will offer lots of support to municipalities around what that can look like, and so there's been some documents developed, some briefing documents around those policy pieces as well, but we don't want to confuse that with the Cannabis Let's Talk and the work that we're doing here. But those are certainly pieces that communities can receive support for in another conversation with us.
And Tammy just expresses her appreciation for all the work put together to support this in our community. So thank you to Laura Lee and Ron and the committee.
Well, thank you for your feedback, and this is a process that we're entering in a collaborative way with yourselves as well. We want to work with you. This is our first time at hosting something of this nature. I was wondering when we were going to hear from Dana. I was thinking, my goodness. Oh, there we go. I was just thinking, Dana, I saw you, and I don't want to single anyone out there, but usually you have a good question or two.
And Shoshana, if you want to email me, you can even use the Cannabis Let's Talk email address, but I can send you some of those other resources that I referred to around policy pieces just to help you as a community start to look at what policies might look like.
Good. Oh, good. And if we've answered all your questions, that's great. But if you think of something, I remember the last time we did a session like this, someone emailed me right afterwards, and I was just taking it in, and I was one of the people that didn't ask. Be in touch. Send us an email. Our address is there as a part of the presentation. The same one that you registered with. You can also register, or rather, email any of the CLTA committee members, Michelle, Zan, Laura Lee, and myself, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. This is a process that we expect that those questions are always a good thing. We're inviting you to think outside the box and to be creative, and as we've said many times, you know your community best. So we want to be responsive, and we want to help sort of look at these things so we can find ways that this is going to be successful for you and for us.
And Ron, it's Michelle. I just wanted to share that we have had a few requests to share the recorded sessions, and let everybody know we are somewhat challenged with that. We are collectively well over 100 years old, this little committee.
Well over.
Wonder where you're going to go with that.
Yeah, did I do okay, Ron? So we've come leaps and bounds in our understanding of technology and how to share resources in the most palatable way, in an accessible way, and so we will endeavor to try to make the recordings available, but we appreciate your patience, and if we can, likely they will be shared with everybody.
So there's lots of experience.
Yeah, lots of experience. What I'm thinking, Michelle, is that if I can share them with our web designer for While on My Home, that will put those recordings in the repository.
Yeah, thank you, Laura.
And then people can
Thanks,
access
Jeanette.
them. So
yes,
I think she'll have the technology for that.
We're good at recording it. We're not sure about what to do with it after that. Thanks, Jeanette. We'll be in touch with IT. And Jeanette, please be in touch with me afterwards, and we'll work to see if we can find a way to make sure that more people are able to access the information session. Well, again, phone lines before I close. One last chance.
If we have enough people, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Martin.
Hi, Martin.
Hi. If we had enough people who are interested in facilitating, would you come out here?
To Drumheller? Absolutely.
Where's Drumheller? I'm teasing. I'm teasing, Martin.
Absolutely. That's something that we want to look at. We've got support to travel as well. So we want to do this in locations that are meaningful and useful for people. And so, yes, if we have enough facilitators in a particular community, maybe you would also draw in others from Hannah and other communities around that would also be hosting, and that would make good sense. We want to look at those opportunities, Martin, for sure.
Okay.
And of course, we'll be working with you. If we're doing that, you'll help with us to be able to determine a good site and a location for that training.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, unless there's another question.
I think we're done, Ron.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and please do be in touch. We look forward to connecting with you again. And you can look for an email shortly. We're just putting it together, a package of the slide deck, as well as some of the key pieces here that we wanted to pass along to you at this time about the proposal and whatnot. Thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. And thank you, Michelle and Laura Lee, Zan, for your contributions as well, even though you weren't here to join us today. But thank you very much for this working together on this today. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, everyone, and have a great day.
Enjoy your day, everyone. Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.